Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Halo Sobat Literasi, selamat berjumpa kembali dengan saya Blantik Literasi, berliterasi setiap hari.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from Group 5. From Literature of Ancient China. This is our group members. Me, Pember Blasari, and then Agista Santoso and Siti Hajar. This is table of content. The first is about historical highlight, people and society, arts and culture from the analects Confucius, and the last is reflection. China is the world's third largest country in area and has the largest population. It also has the world's oldest continuing civilization, one that has been in existence for more than 3,500 years. The people of ancient China, philosophers, artists, writers, scientists, created a rich and brilliant culture. Their ideas and invention command respect and wonderful still affect life today. This is the historical highlight that will be presented by Agista.
The historical highlights. First, Shang. China's history is marked by successions of dynasties, beginning with the Great Shang dynasty. The Shang were warrior nobles headed by a king. These rulers were known for their love of warfare and hunting. The people had great loyalty to their king, their families, and their ancestors. The Shang dynasty produced a stunning culture. Shang artisans learned how to make clothes from silk and excelled in bronze working. The Shang dynasty was also the first to leave written records. Next. Next, Zhou. About 1050 BC, people called the Zhou overthrew the Shang and established their own dynasty. It was the longest in China history. The early years of Zhou dynasty saw great expansion and their establishment of feudalism. The strength of the Zhou dynasty lessened and as tribes invaded from the northern frontier. The feudal lords also began to fight one another. As a result, the decline of the dynasty was called the Warring States period. Next. Qin. The state of Qin, from the name China derives, defeated the Zhou dynasty in 221 BC. The Qin king declared himself Qin Huangdi, or first emperor. Although the first emperor's achievements brought important changes, his methods was cruel. He forced vast number of peasants to build the Great Wall, and many of them died during the constructions. Next. Next, Han. Following the downfall of Qin dynasty, the Han dynasty came to power. This dynasty, which ruled China for more than 400 years, had lasting influence on China's government, education, cultures, and commerce. The Han divided into two periods, former and later. The former Han was a glorious period of innovation and prosperity. The Han were restored to power in after Dynasty 25, and the first decades of the later Han were also prosperous. The religion of Buddhism spread from India to China, where it took root. Within a century, however, political, economic, and social problems began to weaken Han rule again. Next. Tang. Tang. During 4 centuries after the Han dynasty collapse, many minor dynastics rose and fell before the Tang dynasty came to power. The Tang period was a golden age, especially in poetry and painting. The capital city, Chang'an, grew in wealth and population to become the most sophisticated city of its time. Scholarship thrived. The Tang Empire became subject to rebel attacks under the rule of later, weaker emperors, and in 907 it fell to rebel forces. Next. Song. After Tang dynasty ended, rival warlords divided China into separate kingdoms. In 960, one general reunited China and established himself as the first Song emperor. Although the Song Empire was smaller than Han or Tang, it produced a thriving culture. The Chinese carefully studied human anatomy and mode charts and models of the body. Among the most significant inventions of this era were movable type, paper money, and the use of the magnetic compass for sailing. Chinese culture spread throughout Southeast Asia, and China became a major sea power. Yet, despite the economic prosperity and technological advance, the Song dynasty fell to the Mongols in 1279. Next, people and society will be explained by Titi.
Okay, thank you, Augusta. People and society. The first is rulers. The emperor was the central figure of authority in ancient China. Powerful and wealthy, he presided over political, social, and religious rituals. Chinese emperors often rewarded loyal followers with posts in the civil service. During the Tang and Song dynasties, however, a system of written examinations was developed to select officials. Next. The second, peasants. The mainstay of ancient Chinese society was the peasants, the farmers who raised the food for the empire. During the Zhou dynasty, most peasants labored for wealthy feudal landowners, to whom they gave a large share of their harvest. Peasants ranked just below the ruling class because they performed an important role in Chinese society. However, they led difficult lives. Typically, they lived in simple one-room houses with a dirt floor and little furniture. The peasants were often required to supply labor or military service to the government. Emperors built roads and canals with this sorts of labor and filled the ranks of China's vast armies. The next is artisans. Artisans are craftspeople who work with their hands. Skilled artisans in ancient China made useful items such as tools for agriculture, weapons for war, furniture, and household goods, silk, porcelain, and carved jade for the upper classes and for export. Beginning in the Shang dynasty, Chinese emperors controlled the supply of raw materials that artisans used. Artisans produced many of the works that were placed in the tombs of the emperors and noblemen. These included eating utensils, jewelry, textiles, tools, and weapons. And the archaeologists continue to discover rich treasures in ancient burial sites. The next is merchants. Merchants sold the goods that artisans made. Because they did not actually produce anything, they occupied a low place on China's social ladder. Strictly controlled by the government, merchants were allowed to sell only certain goods such as silk, spices, tea, and porcelain. During Han times, a merchant even had to wear a special clothing, a white turban bearing his name and trade and one white and black shoe. Although many merchants grew wealthy as a result of the growth of trade during the Tang and Song dynasties, they found it difficult to improve their social status. Traditionally, merchants were not allowed to take the civil service examination and so were excluded from government jobs. However, prosperous merchants sent their sons to schools that trained them for civil service jobs or arranged their daughters' marriage to civil servants. Servants and slaves. The people on the lowest rungs of Chinese society were not considered important or worthy enough to have a class of their own. Such people included servants, migrant laborers, professional soldiers, entertainers, butchers, and diners. The Chinese also had slaves. During times from Mongolia and Central Asia who were captured in a war were forced into slave labor. Arts and culture will be presented by Fabio Ilan.
Art and culture, philosophy and religion from the 6th century. The 1st century has three main systems of thought took hold in ancient China: Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Confucianism focused on the importance of family relationship and order in society. The teachings emphasized virtue in all interaction between people and value learning, respect, and duty. Taoism was based on following the way or Tao, a universal force underlying all of life. Tao sought humility, simplicity, and harmony with nature. Buddhism, based on the teaching of Siddhartha Gautama, originated in India and reached China about the 1st century. These various philosophical and religious teachings existed together in ancient China. Sometimes they were in opposition, but in general there was a tolerance and even a blending of belief and practices. The next is literature. China has one of the oldest continuous literary tradition in the world, dating back more than 300 years. The earliest known major literary work in the Book of Odes, a collection of poems dating from the Shang and Zhou dynasty. These poems have been referred, studied, and memorized throughout China history. In a later dynasty, writing poetry was considered an essential accomplishment for scholars and gentlemen. From the Analects, Confucius. Confucius started from 551 till 479 before Christ. He endured poverty and treats on his life. He sought out instruction in the Chinese classical arts and tradition, including music, archery, math, charioteering, calligraphy, poetry, and history. Before he went self-imposed, he had an abiding passion to restore the order and moral living to his society, and he active in politics, but he failed or never able to gain the power he sought, and then he went to self-imposed exile from his house, Church of Lu, almost 12 years, advising rulers in other states and spreading his idea on education and moral order. He is also a wise teacher. He broke a new ground by offering his teaching to all the level classes. He eventually gained a large group of followers who revered him for his ideas on the importance of good character and the need for order and authority in all areas of life. He also written down his discipline to preserve his idea and saying from known today as Analects. This is the lasting legacy, the Analects. Analects mean a selection, present Confucius teaching on how people should live to create an orderly and just society. Confucius viewed that true authority to rule comes from a commitment to moral living, not from an aristocratic, was revolutionary for his time. Three most important concepts in Confucius' teaching. The first is humility or Chen, concerned with how a person behaves towards others. According to Confucius, humility is the most important quality to have, after respect, truthfulness, generosity, and love. And then the gentleman and Shunshu. In Confucian talk, the word gentleman refers not a man of aristocratic birth, but to a person who is committed to an ethical life. Confucius teaching that moral life is important than social status. And the last is ritual or li. The term ritual covers all of what Confucius viewed as proper conduct. Ritual was essential to sense of order and respect in society. This is the humanity connection. This painting done on a silk shows a group of scholars reading and writing. Mastery of literary skills was necessary for anyone wanting to hold a government position. The figure in the lower right is a servant grinding ink. Okay, next. This is a related reading. The fish rejoice. The fish rejoice, Wang Shu. The fish rejoice can be a reading example that can be analyzed with a Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, a short book of about 81 pages, is probably the best known work in the Chinese literature. The Tao Te Ching is concerned with teaching what is referred to as the way. From the fish rejoice, it can be concluded that Chuang Shu shows himself to be defeated by his Logician friend as a form of play, arguing about the fish as we are doing exactly what the fish are doing, having fun, doing something we do well for the sheer pleasure of doing it. Lao Shu is accredited with being the first philosopher of Taoism. The detail of his life area a mystery. Legend claims that Lao Shu, which means old master or old philosophers, had a miraculous birth and lived to be 160. To live according to the Tao, a person needs to be close to nature and life in a simplicity and joy. An important idea in the Tao Te Ching is that of Wu Wei, or non-action. This concept means that instead of being competitive, ambitious, and active, a person should just let things happen. A simple life and freedom from desire are said to help people discover the way. The last is reflection. Reflection on literature. To full observation, ancient Chinese literature touches on many aspects of life, from details of everyday experience to largest questions about the right way to life. The writers are carefully observed of both beauty and human relationship. I think that's all from us. I'm sorry if there is a mistaken by pronouncing the letter. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.